Hello, my name is Shontiara Johnson, and I am a Baylor College of Medicine genetic counselor. I work at the Children's Hospital of San Antonio as a prenatal genetic counselor. A lot of you may be wondering what genetic counseling is. Genetic counseling is the process of helping people understand and adapt to the medical, psychological, and familial implications of genetic contributions to disease. As a prenatal genetic counselor, I see many pregnant people throughout the week who are seeking genetic counseling for a variety of indications. Most times, I see patients who have received an abnormal result on a screening test. In these situations, I explain how these tests work and what the patient's results mean. I then explain next steps for patients, which may include another screening test, an ultrasound, or even diagnostic testing. Other times, patients have ultrasound findings that may be associated with a specific genetic syndrome. In this case, it is my responsibility to explain the anomalies and the genetic syndromes they may be associated with. This includes the inheritance pattern of the syndrome, which is how it is passed on from parent to child, and disease management. I offer and explain genetic testing to these patients as well. Every week, I prepare for my patients by searching for medical records relevant to the reason they were referred to genetic counseling. This allows me to be knowledgeable about each patient's medical history and ensures that we discuss necessary information during the genetic counseling session. One of my favorite tasks as a genetic counselor is to create my own counseling aids to educate my patients. Counseling aids are pictures or diagrams that can be used to help patients understand information. While there are a variety of pre-made counseling aids, making my own aids allows me to tailor each genetic counseling appointment to the individual patient in front of me. Counseling aids allow the patient to learn and understand information in multiple ways, as well as facilitate patient engagement. Counseling aids are very patient-friendly, as some of my patients will ask me to print them a handout of my aids so that they can explain concepts to family members that were not present for the appointment. There aren't many medical images that represent patients of varying skin colors. When customizing my aids, I try to incorporate images that are representative of the patients I see. Also, families of different cultures may have different family dynamics. For instance, some families do not share health status and health information with other family members. Additionally, the history of discriminatory healthcare practices in the United States has caused medical mistrust within the African American community as well as other minoritized communities. One of the reasons that I chose to be a genetic counselor was so that I could be a friendly face in healthcare to patients of minoritized communities by personally empathizing with those experiences. My daily goal is to facilitate a comfortable and a safe environment in which health can be discussed without judgment. Genetic counselors are healthcare professionals that support patients and their families. Genetic counselors employ a non-directive approach to counseling patients, which means that patients are given all of the necessary information in order to empower them to make decisions that align with their needs and values. Genetic counseling is a dynamic field that continues to grow and expand each year. I am proud to be a genetic counselor and excited about the future of genetic counseling.